Hello, 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 people, and welcome back to another episode of the USL Show. I'm hoping you're having a wonderful day. It is a great day to be back. But before we talk about me, because I'm always down to do it, how about talking to a Wally right below me? Ryan, man, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Today was certainly a best of times and worst of times type of day. I got the notification that my Tottenham home kit has shipped officially, and I got the light bulbs upgraded in my kitchen. On top of that, I got the rent renewal rates told to me for what they're going to raise my rent for next year. So truly a best of both worlds type of situation or tale of 2 days.
Fair enough. John, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm highlighting the comment that rightly points out, and I hope Nicholas Murray is watching so he knows that there's one person who has the best power rankings in the USL, and you're looking at him.
At least a Louisville fan, so let's just quickly just run over that. Louisville, they have some choice words to say to pro refs. Danny Cruz gets his really one of his allotted 5 blow up at the refs per year, which is always fun. My favorite thing about the Danny Cruz video is that they definitely shoved him into the copying room, and they said talk, talk. But I mean, hey, Louisville, some interesting calls. And can I say something on the low? Dieng might be one of the best strikers going right now outside of Marcanic.
Certainly in terms of form, like the guy is on fire right now. What a get for Hartford, like just kind of signing this 19-year-old who'd never really played at a pro level. He didn't seem like he was going to start initially early in the season. Just given what's happened there, he's become a very good number 9, somebody who you can rely on in the box, someone that we didn't see coming. I think he's a big reason why this team has an outside chance at making the playoffs, weirdly.
Can I tell you something that really endeared me to him? So the Legion game where they came back 2-0 and all that stuff, it was at the very end of the game. He walks up to the ad boards where I'm standing, and I'm thinking he's trying to get out because the game's over. So I go to open it, and he instead kicks the ad board because he was mad at something. And he looks at me and goes, and he puts out his hand, and he goes, "I'm so sorry. Thank you," and walks to the ad board. Truly a gentle giant. I like that
What
guy.
He's a very deceptive 19-year-old.
I forgot he was 19.
I think I'm right about that.
He was towering over me, and I was like
20 now. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, he was an absolute monster, and I was like looking up at him, and because when I went to open it for him, and then he started kicking it, I was like, "Oh God, I'm gonna die." So, hey, yeah, what about that U.S. Open Cup, John? How are you feeling? Are you okay?
I was so nervous, and then the rain delay has just taken it out of me. Like, I'm tired. I don't feel like it. I hope they put the game till tomorrow so I can just be nervous yet again tomorrow. I don't know. It's the one outlet I get for like being a fan of an American soccer team is like Indy 11 making this run, and I'm milking it for everything I can.
So, just wondering if they end up winning, and is it Seattle loses? Are you going to go to?
I'm going to LA. I'm going to Indy. If Indy wins, I'm following them wherever they're going.
It's awesome.
And we still have that outside chance that Indy could be qualifying for the Champions Cup or Champions League.
Yeah, in which case I'm following them to Costa Rica.
John goes
taking
to Haiti.
CONCACAF to a new level.
All right. Hey, let's go. By the way, we have it in. Do I have the? Yeah, whatever. I think I have it misspelled in here. That's on me. Hey, let me go ahead and thank our wonderful patrons. Let's go ahead and go from the bottom. Harry Osden, John Hunt, Frank Anthony, Aaron J, Christopher Cohn, John Floor, Joshua Duder, Michael Fuchs, Oh my gosh, Noah Telfer. It's been a minute. Alberto Aguilar, Jeremy Churchman, Stephen Howard, Rion Lucara, Tim Knox, NF Reg 30, MOS, Kunal Patel, all of the Hedgehog, Andrew Towsley. I'm so sorry. And then Timothy Meadows. I'm out of practice for a few weeks and I can't do anything right. I'm going to fix the scroll at the bottom immediately because I have no idea how to spell apparently. So all that to be said, there's a whole lot that happened this week, but also kinda not. It's a light news week, but that means we can have a bunch of time to do recaps, which is always fun. And I would love just to start off with the Super League, just in general. Um, First off, Brooklyn is actually with Diaza now, and the Liquid Death kit, I'm buying it. I have to buy the Liquid Death kit. I mean, it looks incredible. Um, Dallas has their friendly versus Barcelona, which that's going to be at the Cotton Bowl, which is going to be our first time seeing what the Cotton Bowl looks like for a women's soccer match, which is going to be very interesting. And this week we had two draws, one a 1-1, the other one a 0-0, where DC United still just cannot find a goal. But Ashley Orcus might be one of the best goalkeepers I've seen in a long, long time. She is playing out of her skull. I mean, and then you have Lexington versus Carolina, which that just ended up being a track meet. If you want to watch just the last 45 minutes, I mean, it was just shot, run, run, cross, run, shot. It was awesome.
No, I mean, we talked about it last week in your absence. Week one was very exciting. It felt like the teams could execute at a high level tactically in terms of what they were trying to do. And that really carried over into week two. And obviously, Lexington was the big story, making their debut. Really impressed with the energy they brought in the press. Madison Parsons came out so hot in that game, taking away every pass into the midfield. I thought Lexington struggled a bit spatially with what they wanted to do at the back. They smartly made some changes, just moving players around rather than going to the bench early. It fixed the problems. They were able to get Kaylee Utley going on the right wing. A deserved draw for them, probably. But again, like you're seeing another team in action that is completely up to par at the standard of this league. It's looking like pretty much everyone is going to be competitive, which I think is kind of a big question in year one, right? Like you don't know the standard, you're getting players, you're getting coaches, but it's hard to gauge before you hit the field. So the level we've seen across the board was promising yet again.
And if you're going to talk about the competitiveness, we've played 5 matches in this league season already, and the only team that doesn't have a point right now is the team that hasn't played a game at the moment. And you've seen all of these games be under 2.5 goals as well. So these are super even teams that are taking, I think, their brand of soccer to a really high level of play that makes it should be a fun competitive league to follow this year, and also one that's going to be really tough to predict.
You know, one thing, because we're still waiting on Brooklyn to kick off for the first time. I think, is Brooklyn our only one that has not gone
Correct.
yet?
7 of 8 have played.
That's what I thought. So I was, and I said this on Twitter after week one, and I still stand by it. I wasn't sure what the level in the first few weeks was going to be. And I didn't mean that in the means that talent wasn't good enough, but they only really showed the preseason about a month ago. Some teams later than that, like a couple, legitimately 2-3 weeks at this point that they've been together. In week one, it did not look like it. That said, I felt like week two, you saw more of those growing pains because weirdly enough, they kind of reached that awkward stage. You especially saw it with the Tampa Bay Sun in DC Power, where they were passing the ball around and you could tell that they had an idea of what they were actually supposed to be doing as opposed to we're talented players and like we go wide, then we go inside. Like they knew what they were supposed to do, but they didn't know at the pace to do it yet, or they didn't know the pace of their teammates yet. Where it felt like weirdly enough, they were reaching that awkward preseason middle ground in week two that they didn't in week one. I can't help but wonder if there's going to be some awkward growing pains in the next 2 weeks in terms of teams getting comfortable with each other because there are no Louisvilles in this league or Sacramento's who have been together for 4, 5, 6 years now. It just simply isn't how it works. It just started. So I'll be very interested to see if that happens. But it's also kind of the fun of following along for the first time.
Yeah, and in that Tampa Bay game, really 2 weeks of Tampa Bay, they've tried to play a formation that changes between the phase of the game. They'll defend with the back four with Jordan Lister at right back, and then they'll try to push her up to basically become a winger when they're possessing the ball. Which, hey, I mean, that's a complex strategy. It takes a lot of chemistry to be able to pull that off. And obviously, she's a Canadian international. She's got the experience and quality you want of somebody in such a demanding position. But it's not working, right? Like, that's why Tampa Bay, partway through the DC game, decided, you know what, we just need to simplify. And on the flip side, like DC made some really good in-game changes, making a shift to their own formation. To force Orcus to stand on her head and preserve that draw. So as these teams find their identities, as they kind of figure out what's working, what do we need to abandon, it's only going to get sharper. But starting out at such a high level already is promising.
And what I'm going to be looking into for the next few weeks are the teams that are going to start having these very long, just the trips while they're at home. Like if you're looking at Spokane, they have 6 of their next 7 games are played at home, which is just massive for just building up your confidence and playing within normal, familiar confines. Whereas you're looking at Tampa Bay, who has 3 of their next 4 at home. You have Fort Lauderdale, who have to play their next 3 away from home. And those are really trips that are going to be testing these teams early on in the season and just how it's going to set the tone moving forward.
You know, this is just me being kind of mean to DC because of the badge explainer, the first one with the wing play thing. They were quite narrow, actually. They play quite narrow. Like they definitely let their wing backs overlap, but they're actual wingers that they very much emphasize according to their badge. They really focus on that wing play. They tuck in quite narrow, which I think is just humorous.
When they started dominating the game, they basically were like, okay, we're putting 4 midfielders between the lines and daring you to stop us. Like it was quite narrow. I didn't think about the irony. I need to bang the drum again that the contrast between that gray kit and the blue lettering and numbering cannot be read on TV. Like again, I know they're not going to change it, but it's killing me as someone who's trying to learn players.
Yeah, I am at the point of I am watching the match with the live match center at the same time because I'm like, I know some of these people, I don't know some of these people, I have no idea where these people actually play. And some of them just kind of break what I did. Like Ashlyn Sarepka for Carolina.
Yeah.
She was a striker for Alabama when I went to school there, and she was a winger for Legion. And now she's a right wing back.
Right back, yeah.
And I'm like, what's going on? And so it's one of those things that it changes. There's a lot of changes happening here that if you don't know these players that well, it's kind of a struggle. But honestly, it's also a great time for you to learn about the women's game because there's so many players that you just don't know about. Ashley Orcus, was glad to know her because she's a Birmingham girl and she coaches in the area. She does the whole thing. So I knew of her. But man, there's so many people that are finally learning about a player like that, and it's exciting. Which cannot be enough said about the 2 games that she's had so far. Was it 12 saves, 1 penalty save, and just the ridiculous what she has done so far.
Yeah, I mean, to the point you were making about kind of learning the players, I've legit had more fun watching these 2 weeks of Super League than kind of anything I've watched soccer-wise in the past couple of years. Like just getting to know the culture of these teams, all of these players, has been a real blast for me personally, and I think that the average fan who's not a complete dork would have a similar experience.
So let's kind of move on from the Super League just a little bit. Real fast, U.S. Open Cup, we already kind of talked about it, delayed. As of now, that said, Indy 11 has posted the video of them in the locker room just heading the ball around, and it seems like the vibes are cool. Um, that's one thing that I've noticed from Indy on this U.S. Open Cup run. First off, every club, all the front office people who watch this, because there are a few, if you want good content, allow your videographers and photographers to be involved. The only reason Indy has been getting these awesome videos that they have been is because they've been letting their videographers into the locker room. They've been letting them into the huddle. They've been letting them into these intimate spaces that most people don't want them to be around. If you want cool videos, let them in. India's had a bunch of them. Like to see their vibe because all year long we've been seeing in the Open Cup, especially when I think to Atlanta, where there were the videos of them just just kind of cracking up, having a good time, all loose, going down the walk at the fraction, and that vibe seems to be real. Nobody looked tense, nobody looked scared, nobody looked anything. It was just a relaxed atmosphere, and that's exciting. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on a bit. Let's talk Las Vegas versus Indy. Speaking of, where Indy puts out a team that was absolutely looking forward to today,
Yeah.
and it ends up being a fun one. Where, if we're being completely honest, now this is not. Do you remember old Las Vegas? But also remember old Las Vegas because that B team of Indy beats last year's Las Vegas team handily, in my opinion. This year, it's a 3-2 win to Las Vegas. Is it a little closer than Vegas wants? Absolutely. But in the end, like it's a fun match that Vegas wins. And honestly, more less forget about the Indy side of it personally, because it was kind of a B squad. Talk about Vegas actually being able to win those matches when last year it wouldn't have mattered.
I think what was so impressive was with Las Vegas was sticking to the script in a game that was very weird because Indy came out in a formation that they rarely play in the 4-3-3, playing a somewhat different style. Like there's just no way Dennis Sanchez could have anticipated what was coming from the 11 because Sean McCauley had said during the week, listen, like half of our guys aren't even going to travel. We're going to make a bunch of changes at halftime. So for Las Vegas to come out, to trust that system, to do what they did with some absences as well, like Joe Hafferty and Sean Smart weren't there, but you've got that core. You've got JC Nagando, you've got Valentin Noel. Both of them were exceptional, and they scored minutes into the game. Things did get hairy as you kind of approached halftime, and there were, I think, 3 goals in the last minute of the first half. But then tightening up, or rather just being able to defend that game through the second half when Indy got Malik Foster debuting, when they got Guinzotti onto the pitch. Really impressive to see for a team that's been nothing but impressive all year.
I mean, 5 goals in the first half really just kind of speaks for itself when you see the 3-2 score line. It was the first time since I think Charleston had won 5-0 against Indy 11 that we saw a match with 5 goals scored in one half, which was when Charleston scored all 5 in the second half there. But you're looking at a Las Vegas team who has an outside chance at hosting a home playoff game this year if results break their way. And that's just something that we wouldn't have expected from this Lights team from the start of the season. So to continue to get a result like they did against Indy 11 is massive. And they have at least a really good chance to throw their name into the ring for a home playoff game as they play a wounded Orange County team this week.
And as we talk about the playoffs a bit, the playoff situation in the championship is hairy. Now, let me just kind of break it down like this. Your top 4 in the East is mostly decided. There's a little bit of jockeying for the 4th position between Detroit City, Indy 11, Birmingham Legion, Loudoun United, Rhode Island, and if we're being honest, Pittsburgh with a non-zero chance of competing for that 4th spot. But the top 3 are locked away in probably that order. where things are really interesting is this 5 through honestly 11, sorry, Miami, where Hartford is not out of this. They can still make it in as they're only 6 points off of the 8th position. And then when you look into the West, everything is up for grabs. I think New Mexico has all but clinched a home playoff spot and likely a top 2 positioning with really only Sacramento at their heels. But hey, Tulsa snuck into the top 8. Orange County has been falling a little bit as of late. We can talk about that. Monterey Bay still right there. And believe it or not, with games in hand, Phoenix is on the outside and easily looking in. They win their games in hand. They're in the playoffs. It is absolute carnage in both divisions right now. The West a lot more than the East because other than really the top spot, it's all to play for in the West. But man, both sides are an absolute slaughterhouse with what, 8 weeks to go?
Yeah, I mean, so often in this league, it's about getting hot at the right time. We've traditionally seen it with the Oakland Roots, right? Like they're the team that reels off 8 wins in a row to end the season and have a playoff spot. I think FC Tulsa, they're probably peaking too early to be that team, but boy, have they put themselves in a very good position really since Johan Peñaranda came into net there. Like he's been utterly incredible. Everyone else on the race for the 8th spot kind of feels like a race to the bottom. Like nobody's playing particularly well. Two of the teams have made an no, three of the teams have made an in-season coaching change because I'm not counting El Paso. Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry,
And
Rob.
then
Or sorry, Bill.
Orange County, fresh off of like a shellacking of epic proportions, and you can debate the Dogman Red. Like it was a light shove, but a shove nonetheless. Charleston gonna Charleston. Nick Marcanic is so good at this sport. It's ridiculous. But yeah, like I think the East is more interesting because it's a lot of teams that are like playing well and getting results versus the West is just like a muddle.
Sorry, Brian, were you going to say something?
No, I mean, I do at least want to point out with Tulsa that a lot of this kind of change in form that they've had over the recent weeks for these games that they've played have come away from home, which has just been really kind of a siege mentality that was really boosted the team. But one thing that I am at least circling on my calendar for the future months is the final day of the season. You have Tulsa hosting Monterey Bay, which could very well be a borderline playoff decider for that 8th seed if both teams were able to maintain kind of this position in the table.
Kind of what you're talking about, John, with teams that are playing well. Can I read just the goal differential in the East versus the West?
It's gonna be crazy. Yep.
Okay. And this is, I'm just going to read the team name and then the goal differential. Follow along, people at home. Lou City, plus 31. Charleston, plus 33. Tampa Bay, plus 16. Detroit City, plus 4. Indy 11, minus 4. Birmingham Legion, minus 6. Loudoun United, plus 8. Rhode Island, plus 4. Pittsburgh, plus 4. They finally got above the mark. North Carolina, plus 5. Hartford, again, with not an outside chance of getting in, minus 17. And then I'm not reading Miami's. Then out west. Okay, so that's a lot of pluses. That is a lot of pluses with some barely negatives. You go
This
out
is
west,
about to be what I was getting at, like in a nutshell. I'm so excited.
New Mexico, plus 6. That's the top. Let's just go ahead and compare Lou City, which is plus 31. New Mexico is plus 6. Sacramento, plus 13. Memphis, plus 10. Oakland Roots, minus 7. Las Vegas, minus 1. Colorado, 0. FC Tulsa, minus 7. Orange County, minus 14. Monterey Bay, minus 10. Phoenix, minus 4. San Antonio, minus 8. El Paso, minus 16. No one is Miami bad, but dear God, is that a low bar?
It's very often the case that people will say the West is stronger than the East. I absolutely will not accept that argument this season. Just throwing that out there. I think Loudon would be third or fourth in the West. And they're currently like fringe outside looking in. You never know with Loudon. I don't know. It just feels like the East, I have more teams I trust.
Is that? I mean, we're going to talk about the USL Tactics show in just a moment with what New Mexico's doing. I personally have New Mexico and Louisville as my two title. Like that's my title matchup is Louisville, New Mexico. I get it. Hot take. The two teams at the top of the league. But I say Louisville. Honestly, I'm kind of feeling Charleston a little bit more than Louisville right now. I know they just played. I'm sorry. But like New Mexico is so solid, but they just never have the big game like Charleston and Louisville and Tampa Bay always seem to just have. Nobody in the West has had that big game. Your really big blowout potential of a team is Memphis. And dear God, Memphis could bang 6 on you if they wanted. If they really click, they could put 6 past you. But over to League One, speaking of the playoff race, Charlotte, weirdly enough, still top of the table. Freaks me out because I don't trust that at all. That does not feel real to me. And then Union Omaha, Ford Madison, 1 Knox, which I know y'all kind of talked McKeever last week. But if McKeever was the one holding them back from scoring that many goals, boy, that should have happened a long time ago. Greenville, who has fallen off. They are struggling. NOCO, who remember when they had that horrifically bad start, they're back. Spokane, who is comfortably jockeying for, being into the playoffs when it's so hard to do that as an expansion team. And then Tormenta, which that just doesn't feel right. If we're being really honest, Tormenta being in the playoffs, granted final one, just feels weird. And then you're looking at your Chattanoogas, even your own Lexingtons. There's a chance of a Richmond. There's not even an impossible chance of Central Valley. The 6 and 7, or I'm sorry, the 7 and 8 of League One are wide open for absolutely anybody, which for a 12-team league makes sense. But if you remember the chaos from last year or 2 years ago when Tormenta won it all, on the final day of the season, they could have either finished second in USL League One or missed the playoffs altogether, depending on how the results went. That's how League One is. Like, it was insane that they could have finished second in the league or missed the playoffs altogether because that's just League One.
Yeah, I mean, the table for me is kind of an argument that this should have been a 16 playoff field again.
Yeah.
You're really going to tell me one of Tormenta, who I really like a lot of pieces for Tormenta, this is not a great Tormenta team. And then everyone below them, like Lexington, Chattanooga, Richmond, Fuego, at one point or another, we've just had an episode where we're clowning on them because they're not good. Like, I don't know. It feels like this year's League One is so bifurcated between 2 tiers of contenders and pretenders. But at the same time, it'll be an exciting race, certainly. And I'm cheering for Fuego, and I hope that I can get a mini fridge out of it.
Yeah, John, I mean, I was going to echo exactly what you had said, that this just feels like at least a showing that it should have been a 16 playoff right now when you have a 12-team league and there are 5 teams with a negative goal differential at the moment. There probably isn't a reason to have all or one of those 5 teams in the playoffs right now. I would even go as bold as to say that the 8 teams that we have currently in the postseason right now, I think will be the 8 teams for USL 1 at the moment. Maybe not necessarily this order, but I think we are rather set with at least the top 6 are pretty much going to be insured in. And I just think Spokane and Tormenta will rise above the rest of the table here. But if you're going to look at that top six, I mean, there are just 6 points separating Charlotte and Northern Colorado right now. And you could realistically see any number of those teams taking the top two spots of or the top spot of the league right now.
I'm going to say something just really mean. Just really mean. And it's not fair to Charlotte, but they feel like one of the most fraudulent number ones I have watched in a long time.
I think that Charlotte has improved markedly as the season has gone on. I will give them credit for that because early in the season, like I was banging that drum constantly. I couldn't get enough of being really mean to the Charlotte Independents. And now the attack is flowing. I think defensively they've tightened up as well. Getting Sis back into that midfield has been unspeakably important, really going both ways because he's so good at shielding the back line. He's underrated as a tempo setter who can let them develop those moves. With Obertan getting upfield, with someone like Juan Obregon, who's kind of lapping the league if you look at goals in all competitions, they're figuring it out. It's not the prettiest soccer, but they're not really trying for it to be. They feel like they're kind of built to make a run in the playoffs. And hey, we saw it last season, albeit they've lost players since then, but they're a team that can get to a title game. So I've kind of sold myself on Charlotte being for real.
Yeah, and this is a Charlotte team who's lost one game in 90 since June 19th. That was their last defeat. And it was actually Greenville who they'll face in the Jägermeister Cup this week. Actually, a really fun matchup that will determine the winner of that group stage. But if you're looking at their remaining seven remaining seven league games this year, 4 of them come against teams that are currently outside of a playoff spot. And then you have Madison and Northern Colorado, who both have to make a trip to Charlotte, which is at least an advantageous home game for them. So I could very well see Charlotte still end up being the number 1 seed out of the regular season this year.
Well, let's go ahead, and when we're talking about the playoffs, let's go talk about that New Mexico team. Let's talk about today's USL Tactics Show.
New Mexico United can hurt you in 100 ways, but it's their center back pairing, no matter who is in that group, that really sets them apart and shown especially brightly this weekend against Colorado Springs. You're seeing Talon Maples here carrying the ball upfield, putting the switchbacks to the screws because he's able to dribble around the press. That's something you rarely see from a central defender at any level, much less in the USL. But Maples knew when to pick those moments, or as you're seeing here, to reset and find space for a partner like Kalen Ryden. Ryden, who came off at halftime, was equally excellent as Maples as a distributor. Their ability to set the tone in the final third, allow New Mexico to reset when they had that foothold in the attacking half, was critical to the offensive flow, to that sense of control and the ability to limit Colorado Springs from getting their own counterattacks, from taking advantage of sloppy turnovers. It thus allowed New Mexico to really live in those dangerous areas and allow players like Mokwele Akale, a very slick dribbler, to do damage where it mattered the most. Even as Colorado Springs heightened the press, Ryden continued to excel. You're seeing him hit a pass to Zico Bailey in the pivot there, and then it's a 1-2 combination that sees New Mexico advance. Those two defenders were equally excellent in their own area. You're seeing Colorado Springs pass quite far upfield, and while Ryden does end up fouling his opponent there, it's the sort of stop that you're going to live with. Colorado Springs isn't able to keep their move going. Kind of same idea here, where you're getting a step up against Ronaldo Damas. Yes, the switchbacks get their attacking mid to receive, but because Damas is covered, they aren't able to access their most crucial creator. This is really par for the course for a New Mexico team that is shapely and relies on that central defensive structure, no matter the context. You see them holding firm in the back four here. They've got that platform, and they've got Zico Bailey covering in the number 6 spot. Yes, this play ultimately ends with a pretty sloppy deflection, but it's emblematic of the way that New Mexico stays structured and relies on those central defenders, no matter the phase of play, to get the job done.
So, with all that, we have talked about New Mexico a lot. And, we say it in the context of talking about the other teams. We talked about the Louisvilles, we talked about your Charlestons, and even Sacramento's. I think a lot of people are still waiting for them to actually get going because it doesn't feel like they've really gotten off the mark fully. Like they're winning games, but it doesn't feel like what we think Sacramento should feel like. But kind of who cares? New Mexico's getting the results, and kind of what you laid down with what they're doing defensively, and even when those center backs aren't making those passes and they aren't just stopping the attack but spearheading it themselves, they have a guy who I was way too harsh on in the past, in Tim Bacchus, who is having a career year right now.
No, I feel like there's a lot to like about New Mexico from front to back. Obviously, like they're in first place for a reason, but so much of it starts with the center backs in the central midfield for this team. And I think Eric Quill knows that he's got depth at those spots. He knows who to call on in certain matchups. More often now, we're seeing Kalen Ryden, we're seeing Will Seymour, players who were expected to be starters from week one who went down with injuries, get integrated into the mix yet again. And the results have been nothing but good for this New Mexico side. Have they been getting lucky? Possibly. Like if you look at the expected goals, they're a team that's closer to 10th place in terms of the league as a whole than they are to like up in the territory of Louisville and Charleston. But hey, I mean, some teams just have that ability to win games. Some teams are built to outperform their XG a little bit. New Mexico seems to have that magic.
Yeah, you just have four teams in the league right now who are outscoring New Mexico. Memphis is the only one in the Western Conference, and then you have the top three currently in the Eastern Conference. But it's been a New Mexico team who is now on their longest unbeaten run of the season right now with 4 matches and having had really high scoring games in at least 3 of these last 4. Or it's something that is going to be like really fascinating to watch. In fact, the 2 games that I really have circled on their calendar, and depending on how the next 2 games for New Mexico go, these may not matter, but they still have to play Sacramento twice for the remaining part of the year. They play them at home on a Wednesday night in September, and then to end the month, they travel to Sacramento. So there could still be a chance that Republic come up and take an opportunity to grab the top spot away from New Mexico. But if they can beat Oakland this week and then get a really kind of layup of a game against Miami the following week, they could really put curtains down on the top spot race in the Western Conference before Sacramento even has a chance to play New Mexico.
And I want to butcher the name of the tradition. Every time I watch a New Mexico game and they do, is it the Enchanted Minute or is it the Magical Minute?
I think it's magical, maybe.
Enchanted would make sense given it's the
It's
Enchanted
not.
Day.
It makes more sense, but it's not. I know that's not it.
Okay. No, either way, every time I see it, I always just want to be there so bad. I just want to sit in there just for that minute. I can leave after that, but I just want to be in that for one good time. It always just makes me so excited. Yeah, that's just it. Always really enjoy that about New Mexico. Um, let's talk about some of these other matchups in Magical Minute. Thank you. It should
Just
be
magic. No AL.
Magic Minutes. It should be Enchanted, shouldn't it?
I feel like they must integrate that somewhere else. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Anyway, um, let's talk about some of these other matchups. We kind of talked on Charleston a bit. Big blowout there. This was a weekend of blowouts. Like, we talked about Greenville. They got 3-0 by NoCo. We had the 6-0 out of Orange County, which led to an open letter. You don't get many open letters. Doesn't happen much. That said, I so respect it. I'm really not saying that as a dig. I really do respect it, coming out and just being like, yo, that sucked. My own Birmingham lost 3-0 and I was doing fine. There was a lot of blowouts and it kind of led to a weird, like it kind of just led to a weird kind of time with talking about things because we're not really talking about massive matchups. because they were all blowouts.
That the Charleston game, I know I hinted at it a bit earlier, and really Orange County from their perspective. I thought in the first 4 minutes of the game they looked all right. Like the strategy was what you want to do if you're trying to stop a Malloy-less battery. And then they get like the first opportunity Charleston gets to break into the attacking half, and you get Torres on the ball. Nick Markanek is streaking behind, and it's game over. I do think from the Charleston perspective, there was a lot of useful experimentation that went down. Jackson Conway got the start at striker in this game and showed a lot more of a penchant to kind of move from side to side, try to hold up possession than we've seen from MD Myers, who's much more of a kind of lead the line, get into the box sort of striker. Jay Chapman, as well as a distributor in the midfield, was quite good. He's a bit more, I don't know, risk taking than Malloy tends to be. But I think that can be useful for a Charleston team that when they were kind of in their dry spell in the spring, they lacked a little bit of that verve. Going up against 10 men isn't really the best way to get used to the new players, but you take what you can get, and they executed to a T the second half with, as our boy Ben likes to call them, the M&M boys, just ridiculously good. Like, I don't know what more to say. And for Orange County, you just got to pop back up from this. Like the red card derailed any effort to get a point out of this game. I think it's good to see them taking accountability so strongly and so willingly. But yeah, I mean, the mentality in the locker room has to be up to par, or it's going to be a tough stretch.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 5 matches without a goal, much less without a win. That's 7 hours and 32 minutes. That it's enough time that Las Vegas will be able to drive from Las Vegas to Orange County for their game this weekend and still have about 3 hours to spare since Orange County has last scored a goal. Well, but like looking forward, you really just have to like turn things around for Orange County. I mean, they can hang their hat on the fact that they are still in a playoff spot at the moment. They're level on points with Monterey Bay. And you actually do get a match against Monterey Bay coming up here in 3 weeks. That could be huge for deciding, just separating yourselves from the rest of the league. But the mentality in the locker room certainly just, it has to be in a tough spot right now and just has to turn around if you have Las Vegas and Rhode Island with these two crucial home games.
And, kind of touched on it. Pittsburgh goes over to Birmingham and just absolutely dominates. And, we're starting to see Pittsburgh come to life. And, like, that's a team, the way that they're playing, you do not want to see them in the playoffs. Eric Dick is one of the best, arguably the best goalkeeper in the league right now. Is that an insane thing to say? I mean, he is, as a pure shot stopper, he's up there. And he does everything that Pittsburgh needs him to do. He bails them out when the low block kind of fails them, which is frankly not that often. And Kizza is kind of turning into what I think Bob Lilly had envisioned him to be preseason, which was his next Dequa, kind of. And he's not putting up Dequa numbers, but no one expected him to do that, honestly. And it's been very impressive with what he was doing. Kizza was somebody I was very not harsh on, like as a person, but he was supposed to be their talisman. He didn't live up to it. And then it finally looked like he has been getting those strikers goals that you expect out of a Lily Ball team. All that for him to get his 400th career victory, which is insane to think about. 400 is nuts.
No, I mean, an incredible achievement for Bob Lilly, who is like a first ballot Hall of Famer, no matter what criteria you're applying. And for him to do what he's doing with this Riverhounds team, who are still punching towards the playoffs, is impressive. I think the thing in this game was the connection between Kizza and Dien, who's somebody who's not really had a ton of minutes in the forward line, and looked to be quite mobile, was finding space behind the fullbacks, providing the service Kizza needs. And Kiz is never going to be the guy who's pouring in Dequo level goals. He's just not that consistent. But you get games like this. You had that Phoenix Rising win in the spring where he's able to get a brace. He's feeling himself. If he hits right at the proper time for the Riverhounds, that's going to be huge. But so much of this team's quality and really the upturn, as we smartly saw in the comments, was Bradley Sample really in the midfield has been an absolute standout. There's a reason why Canardo Forbes is barely starting games anymore, and it's because Lily has just found the balance with Sample as a much more defensive-minded guy who can sit back, let someone like a Robbie Mertz push up field into a kind of three-man press more often. It's been a different look, certainly, for the Riverhounds compared to what we saw last season, but their ability to kind of change it up week to week has been impressive, and it showed against Birmingham.
What I think's been really impressive with Pittsburgh right now is that they're honestly taking the approach that we had mentioned earlier in the show, where like what Oakland has done in years past, where they would just get to the second half of the year and then reel off this insane run of games to kind of carry themselves into the playoffs. Pittsburgh have quietly gone 8 matches unbeaten right now and still sit outside the playoff picture. That if you kind of continue onward for their schedule for the remainder of the year, they're really 2 difficult games that they have left on the schedule is Tampa Bay away from home, and then on October 12th, which could still very well be in the heat of them trying to clinch a playoff spot, they host the Charleston Battery at Highmark, and that's actually a really bogey game for the Battery, as they haven't beaten Pittsburgh at Highmark since July of 2018, when Ant-Man and the Wasp was still in theaters.
All right.
That's so good. Like a fastest draw in the West, just whipping it out there and firing away. Real quick on the Birmingham side there, Kaylor, I do a little bit of Q&A. What was up with the Dodson roof deployment?
No clue. Yeah. Honestly, it felt like they were trying to get a right footer to put in crosses to Pino, which personally I would rather have Dodson at right back and Preston putting in those crosses, an actual winger. But if you feel like you need Jake Roof in this team, which frankly I think that this team's best with Jake Roof in it, I think you drop Rita Zaire because I don't see the reason why he's here in general. I think that it's trying to force pieces, square peg, round hole kind of thing. I think that if you're going to keep Jake Roof in this team and you're going to do that whole thing, I think you drop Pino for Preston and say whatever. Let's put Dodson on the right wing and let Dodson run balls like stuff through and cross balls into Preston, and let Alex Cornale spray long balls over the top, because that's what this team kind of does all the time anyway, is someone's down there somewhere, but nobody has the speed like Preston to be down there somewhere. It just feels like trying to force things that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and especially on the point about Zuhair. Like, he's a good player, certainly. He's got a lot of talent. He showed it in San Antonio. It feels like a very poor fit for him in this Legion team, given what's needed out of the position he's taken up.
But
so,
yeah. My only point on Legion is that I'm really glad we let EJ Johnson leave. Didn't need him at all. Glad we had him on trial. Definitely didn't need another striker on the team. Thank God he didn't score against us.
He's actually not been good for Pittsburgh, but of course he had to score against you.
You know what? Here's what what I've seen on film. I know the goal tally isn't look great.
This is a good point.
I also think that if they were to play, because I have Sterling and EJ Johnson together, where Sterling can play that hold up play and play in place EJ through with that speed, I think they could be really lethal, but I don't know.
No, you're right. It's just not been the right fit so far, but he's a talented player. He can play at this level. I just don't know if Lily Ball is the right context.
The Boya Ture comment in the chat for Legion, literally the only striker on the roster. Yeah, he's not playing for the rest of the year. He's going to be out. So that is, yeah. So there's that. Let's try to hit these fast. We have 2 phone calls that we need to listen to. One of them I think is going to be quick. One of them that I think is going to be a little bit shorter. If I can find the correct one. Here we go. And let's just go ahead and listen to them. Why don't we? So right here.
Hey y'all, love what you're doing. Appreciate it so much, especially covering lower league soccer in the U.S. So, question for you: what tactical changes do you think the USL Super League will help move forward with the women's game? Appreciate y'all. Thanks, man.
Well, through the background noise, that sounded like a question of what changes should the Super League make to improve the women's game?
Yeah, that's it. It was basically appreciate you guys. Thank you for doing what you're doing with the lower leagues soccer. What changes would you make to the Super League?
It sounded like an adult talking in a Charlie Brown animated thing. It's a good question, though, to be fair. I mean, I think what you have to look at is like the academy side in the pipeline. In Lexington, who we talked about earlier, is doing it right? Like they've got the W League team. They're building up the youth apparatus. They're getting the stadium built. All about being able to take young players in your community, let them come through the system, and then, hey, you are going to end up in a first division women's professional soccer league in the United States in your home country. Like, what could be better for the sport of women's soccer than that? So investing in the youth side, making sure you have that in place is, for me, what's key.
And I'll echo what Ewan is saying in the chat, that it really is just the infrastructure, that ensuring that the league, from not just its stadiums, from its league structure, its front offices, from having the TV partnership deal with Peacock, having all of these structures in place to further legitimize the league is super important. And then when you grow the league by getting teams in Jacksonville, Palm Beach, Madison coming into the league over the next few years, it's really important to continue to have each of those teams kind of elevate their game, raise your game, hashtag, if you will, when they come into the league, and just continue to really push that higher boundary that a rising tide is going to raise all ships.
I guess for me, my biggest thing would be finalize that CBA. Like, I know that at least what I understand, could be wrong, might be wrong, is that this is supposed to be running on an enhanced version of the USL Championship with an increased minimum wage from the USL Championship, but the same general outline as the championship is just their league minimums, basically. But they don't have a set in stone CBA. Get that CBA in place. Get that CBA in place. Gotta have it. I know that's more of a PA thing than a league thing, but the league also really brings along that kind of thing. So I think that would be where my head goes, is let's find a way to immediately give these players protections and try to nip issues in the bud before they ever happen.
Yeah.
Last question, not from a house party. Here we go.
What's up, nerds? Long-time listener, first-time caller. Hey, third division soccer is the Fermi paradox of U.S. soccer. If the U.S. Soccer Federation wants third division to succeed, they have to change the professional league standards. Discuss.
So third tier is kind of what it is right now. And there's a lot of them. Oh boy, are there third tiers. And there needs to be some changes. Discuss.
Well, you look at, is it the League of Clubs? I'm sorry. Like, I'm sure it's very legitimate as an organization, but that name, man. and NISA and the issues with the NPSL and everything that have tried to push up into that professional tier, right? Meanwhile, League One has a lot going for it, certainly. Being part of the USL in and of itself is a boon because of the resources it gives you. Look at a case like Northern Colorado, where there seems to be league support for the team right now. At the same time, it's a very Southeastern-based league that has struggled to expand westward. We're gonna, and frankly, the best clubs in League One want to get out of League One. Like, we've seen it with Lexington, we've seen it with North Carolina, Omaha on the docket. It's going to be an interesting stretch in the next couple of years, right? They've got 6-7 teams coming in next season. I'm sure that they've been well vetted. I think a lot of them have done very well already on the PR side, thinking about Portland in particular. But how many of them are going to be around in 5 years? How many of them are going to hit the ground running and do what they need to do to hit financial viability? Certainly there is a lot in place in terms of the hurdles, in terms of the governance that is making it harder for this to work out in a way. Like a third league, there is absolutely no reason why it shouldn't work, kind of getting to the Andy thing, and yet we've never seen it actually work. League One is the best hope we've had, and I hope that they can continue to manage it, and we're at the crucial stretch to see if it really is going to come together.
What's going to be really helpful with 2025 is that with the kind of isolated look that we have of Fuego, Spokane, and Northern Colorado, you're getting 3 more teams being added to that stretch of the country that was really lacking third division teams. And even then, you're also growing into the New England area with Westchester and Portland. So they are expanding their footprint beyond kind of a Southeast league. I think what is always going to be kind of at the back of the mind and kind of a concern within USL 1 is just kind of what they're doing over in MLS Next Pro, that Next Pro is going to be very aggressive in trying to push their B teams into other markets. You've already seen that with what the Town has done with moving into kind of Oakland, and you're going to see a lot of other teams and independent cities evaluating their options between either going into USL 1 or going into MLS Next Pro. And I think it's going to be really tough for the federation to come in and try and either separate the leagues or force some sort of merger or some sort of work together point at some future dates. And throwing in a World Cup in 2026, I think it's not really a priority for them at the moment. It's going to be a mess within USL 1 in the third tier for the next few seasons, in my opinion.
You know, one thing that Zach, who's from Protagonist, at 919 Zach, I do believe. So he has been kind of screaming for a long time of all of the third divisions to be unified, and kind of real, kind of not. He would sit there and say, MLS, just buy it all so we can all be together. Right, because he's like, because he's in North Carolina, I think he said that there are 3-4 teams in North Carolina in the third division, and only 2 of them can play against each other. Like, I get it. I totally get it, and it sucks. I think in terms of going out west, I think the biggest change that has to happen is for the third tier. I think we have to get away from the national scale. It needs to be more regionalized. I think if it was more regionalized, I think if USL League One decide to say we are going to be like Northeast, Southeast, Northwest, and then the West, whatever that means, right? I think you would actually see a big boom in League One, because while it's cheaper to buy into League One, the travel is brutal, especially if you're a Spokane, whom it's hard for me to see Spokane stick around for much longer in League One if we're looking at just who is in their footprint, right? It's no one. It's one of those situations. I think if they made it more regional, I think more teams would actually join in because it'd be more financially viable for them. By the way, William Lamb drops in and says that it's updated. The first of the two semifinal matches of Sporting Kansas City versus Indy 11 will begin. The warm ups very soon. Has been confirmed.
Yeah,
According to
10:45
Sporting.
kickoff is what we're looking at.
I mean, we'll have 18 teams in ESL 1 next year, so you could split the league easily into two divisions of 9. I guess the always problem that you have with splitting it is that there's always going to be at least one team that's going to get the short end of the stick and has a lot more travel than what they are. I mean, you see that in the USL Championship right now with Memphis and Tulsa having at least longer travel than if they were in the Eastern Conference.
I mean, that would just be Madison and Omaha to be in the St. Louis conference, basically. So,
real quick, I just need to throw out, I did not expect Andy to make us like take a science quiz on the Fermi paradox. Good stuff.
Let's go ahead and move on to those predictions, why don't we? Got some fun ones this week. A couple of recappy things that happened with the predictions because that's how it always goes. First things first, let's talk about New Mexico. Once again, big New Mexico pod and our wonderful friends out in Oakland. It is Oakland versus New Mexico. Does New Mexico stay hot? Does Oakland, kind of build off of a good draw versus Memphis? What happens there, John?
I have a draw here. Oakland is kind of leaning into the fact that they can be a chameleon. Like you're seeing a different look almost every week out. Cameron Riley was kind of flitting between lines in the last game. The week before that, they went oops all defenders in terms of the lineup. I feel like they've got some of the speed you want over the top. They can really challenge New Mexico. And I think that they're stout enough defensively to hold off what that team does. So it'll be a fun match, certainly, but a draw.
Ryan.
Yeah, I'll echo what John has said, that it's going to be a fun match. I certainly think this will be one that'll see both teams find the back of the net, and I do think this will be over 2.5 goals. But I've actually picked New Mexico to win this one. They've only won in Oakland once in the history of this series, but they've won their last 4 games away from home, and I just think, knowing that they have 2 matches against Sacramento looming in a few weeks, they'll want to at least more pad the gap that they have over Sacramento in second, so they'll win this one.
I'm also taking New Mexico in this one, although I thought about it really, really hard. Next up, it is going to be the away fixture for Birmingham to try to right a wrong versus Rhode Island as Birmingham takes on all of its former players and coaches, essentially, and they go up to the great Northeast. Who you got?
Yeah, I've got Rhode Island winning it this time around. I think they've lost the touch a little bit in terms of their form, but you could say that equally, probably more forcefully about the Legion right now. I think that Rhode Island just has the sense of width, what they get out of Quizera and Turnbull, that is going to give the Legion problems behind their fullbacks. I think I'm going to expect a big game from JJ Williams in this one. He feels like a player who's been waiting to burst out, and what better team to do it against than Birmingham? So, yeah, Rhode Island.
I think it's been at least kind of lost on a lot of people this season that Birmingham has been weirdly good away from home right now. This season, they've picked up 6 wins across all of their road victories, all of their road games this year, and have only lost 1 of the last 9 road games this season. So I think it really is a tricky game for Rhode Island to kind of approach. I have this one where Rhode Island actually does get the better of Birmingham in this one, but I think this will be a very competitive matchup.
I used to have the numbers somewhere, but I think Legion are actually historically a better away team than a home team. So make that of what you will. I'm also taking Rhode Island. I'm just going to run through the former Birmingham people once again. They're there because I just find it quite funny. Of Zach Harivo, Colin Smith, Gabriel Alvis, JJ Williams, Cano Smith, obviously. I'm forgetting. Clay Holstad's from Birmingham. And someone I forgot in the recent list, current assistant coach and former Legion Academy director and player, Marcus Ugarte. So a lot of former Birmingham, a lot of people who would love to do the double on their old team. It'd be a lot of fun for them to do it at home. I am taking Rhode Island. Greenville versus Charlotte. We just talked about Charlotte. Yes, I did kind of call them fraudulent a little bit, but that does not mean that they aren't scoring goals like mad. And you mentioned Omar Sis. He is fully back, and it's exciting. And this is the final round of the Jägermeister. If Greenville gets a result, they are through. I think they're through no matter what. But Charlotte, they have to win this game or get to the penalty shootout, because if they don't, I'm trying to think of who's behind them. Is it One Knox? If One Knox wins and Charlotte loses outright, Charlotte is out of the Jägermeister Cup. And when you couple that with the fact that Greenville has not been very good recently and Charlotte's been very good recently, how do you make of that when you have one last shot at glory?
Are you getting paid by Jaeger? What's happening here?
I wish.
He's hiding a fridge from the rest of us.
Against my better instincts, I think Greenville goes out and gets a result in this one. And really, this is a team that has been so poor offensively since Leo Castro went down, essentially. They need to break that at some point. And I think the Cup, as bizarre and topsy-turvy as it's been, is the place to do it. Certainly the Independents come into this one motivated. I think if there's a matchup that you can exploit, it is McKinnon against Clay Dimmick, just in terms of the sheer speed of McKinnon, the guile that he brings on the left side. I think it's going to be a tight run game and maybe a penalty kick sort of deal, but I've got Greenville breaking their streak.
Yeah, and as I had mentioned earlier in the show, Greenville is the last team to beat Charlotte this year in 90 minutes, so they're certainly fully capable of getting results against this team. And as we've seen with Lexington, it's very possible to really kind of like salvage a season or kind of turn around a form just based off of your own Jägermeister Cup performance. So while I think that Greenville is going to really put up a big fight, I really just have to go with Charlotte to win this one. Oddly enough, looking through the historical matchup, Charlotte has never won a game in Greenville against the Triumph. So it's really kind of a reversal of history to pick this result, but I think Charlotte gets the win.
Now, I am currently looking up the Jägermeister tiebreaker because
Goals scored.
is it goals scored?
That's a third place thing, or like the wild card.
Okay. So I'm trying to figure out the tiebreakers.
Anytime anyone reads Jägermeister Cup rules, my brain just turns off and I don't process any of it.
They probably had Jägermeister forming the tiebreakers.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Ooh, actually, if I'm looking at this correct, the tiebreaker would be points obtained in matches played against teams in question. Blah 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 blah. Okay, that made a lot of sense. So basically, head-to-head matchup is what we're looking at, and I had it wrong. It was One Knox is the other group that's as tight as can be. It is Richmond Kickers on the door. If Charlotte do not get all 3 points, they are out of the Jägermeister Cup because Richmond Kickers have the head-to-head win through penalty kicks. So if they simply go to if Charlotte goes to penalty kicks and loses, like you're predicting, John, Charlotte's out.
Well, then Charlotte's out.
Rest in peace. I'm taking Charlotte. I think that is going to be Charlotte and Greenville going through. Now, wait, do I need to look up Greenville and I'm not doing that because Richmond and Greenville, I think, will be tied on points. Yeah.
We're picking games, not groups.
I understand, but I'm intrigued. Next up, we do have Madison versus Omaha. and this is the closest group. I'm sorry, I'm going to do it again. Ford Madison on 15 points, Lexington on 13 points, and then one Knox on 12 points. And also, it's arguably Ford Madison's biggest rival, which is Omaha. So there's a chance that if Omaha wins this, they could be knocking Ford Madison out of the Jägermeister Cup, which is always a good time if you're an Omaha fan. But there's a reason why Ford Madison sits at the top. Can Omaha take down the kings of their division?
So a couple things here. One, moratorium on Kayla reading tables next week. Two, the question from Ben in the chat, crunchy peanut butter, ride or die, which this is a thing that popped up in the Indy 11 mentions on Twitter during the show. 3, Omaha, because these two teams played fairly recently in a 2-2 draw, but it took every bit of willpower from Madison to get there. It was, I think, like a 95th minute Jake Kroll goal or something. Meanwhile, like if you look at the past weekend of results, Omaha is flowing. They're connecting. Joe Gallardo, either player of the week or at least on team of the week because of what he was doing on the wing. They've really found their footing again as an attacking team. It feels like this one is meant for Omaha to go and get a win, even though it is a tough matchup, to be sure.
Yeah, this was actually a really tough one for me to predict as well. And on Thursday night, I think it's going to be interesting because it'll really kind of just set the tone for so many other games following this matchup. I mean, how Lexington will approach their game against Chattanooga is going to be a very fascinating look. If you just look at their recent form, Madison have been shut out in their last 2 games coming into this one, and it's one Lord of the Rings Return of the King duration since they last scored a goal. But I still have picked them to beat Omaha in this one, just knowing that they have the group stage lead on the line. They don't want to go out on this one, especially in front of their home crowd. I think Madison win.
Couple that with the fact that Union Omaha has literally nothing to play for in this match, as there is zero chance for them to win their own division and there's zero chance for them to fall into third. There's nothing for them to play for. I think that there's going to be a sense of either complacency or just simple rotation of the squad. I think Ford Madison is taking this one. Last but not least, we are going back to the Super League as Nicholas Murray does us a reverse Uno card in a peanut butter question and gives us a hazelnut spread.
My blood sugar could not handle that as an alternative.
Ooh,
I like smooth peanut butter, by the way.
I'm torn. It depends on the stage of life I'm in. I used to be a smooth guy, then right now I'm in a crunchy mood. I don't know. Just kind of depends.
Very mature.
Yeah. That said, with Nutella, I put Nutella exclusively on a strawberry jam sandwich.
That sounds great.
That's where we are tonight. Let's go over to the Super League, why don't we? As Brooklyn kicks off for the first time ever, which, hey, there's a team from New York City. Yeah. That's finally kicking off. Rest in peace, Queensboro. We have Brooklyn officially kicking off versus the ascent of Carolina. Can Carolina continue to score goals against the brand new club, or can Brooklyn give them a swift liquid death?
I mean, it is an interesting challenge for Carolina, who obviously in week 1, no one had tape on anybody. And then they're playing against the Lexington team that knew how Carolina wanted to play. Now they're playing against a Brooklyn team that has 2 weeks of match tape. Like, that's a disadvantage for Carolina. And also to have had 3 matches now, lacking the rest, going on the road. We know nothing about Brooklyn at the same time. Like, that is just all vibes right now. However, I do have a Brooklyn FC kit coming my way as of this afternoon, so I'm picking Brooklyn because I can be bought.
I respect that. Ryan?
Yeah, just looking at like all the previous games that we've had in the Super League up to this point, they've all been under 2.5 goals. We've seen draws in them more often than not. And I'm just going to go off of I guess, the 5 game history that we have of this league is that I'm going to pick a draw in this one. And I think it'll be under 2.5 goals. And I'm asking once again, betting services need to start offering this league.
Not falling into degeneracy. Not falling into degeneracy. Promise. We promise.
Yeah, Bart Simpson on chalkboard. Yeah.
I didn't bet on the NFL preseason this year.
There we go.
I'm taking Carolina. I hear what you're saying about having match film. I do understand that, but I also think that there's something about having 2 weeks of playing together in an actual match that means a little bit more to me. So I'm taking Carolina. To John Fuller's point, Ashlyn Serepka is fast becoming a star. Ashlyn Serepka is someone who should have been playing professional as soon as she left college. I know she went to Denmark to play in the 3rd tier there. She should have been in NWSL and thus now Super League for a long time as soon as she left. I think Ashlyn's awesome. I just think having 2 full matches in match play in an actual match matters a little bit more than the 2 weeks that Brooklyn can watch on them. So I am going to take Carolina.
On the Brooklyn coach thing real quick, because we've poked fun at that before. Seems like they've got a coach all set to go. They're waiting on some visa things. Could be about 3 more weeks. So they're going to be under an assistant to start the season. That shouldn't stop them from announcing the person and saying, hey, we're waiting on visa things, but I digress.
Twitch plays USL Super League.
Can he, the person that's the coach, can they just hop on like a Zoom call and just watch training and like yell from like a microphone and stuff? Is that allowed?
It's a good question. I will say they have a local alternative if they need somebody to be their interim manager. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
This is true.
Yeah.
You're getting on the subway every single day just to go down there. Like
it take an hour and a half to get to Coney Island. There we go.
All right. Well, that is that. What final USL thoughts do you have? As Ben is laying down just really good advice, financial advice for all the potential gamblers out there in our chat. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, my advice is don't bet.
Oh man. Any USL thoughts? Any final ones? No? Okay. All right. Final thoughts for the night. John.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really left my era of being a pop girl, so just a shout out to the Sabrina Carpenter album. I'm not going to tell you it's great, but it's fun. She's also somebody who, about once a song, will have a lyric that is so sexually explicit that you can't even believe that like this could be a thing on the radio. And I'm not someone who's gonna like turn their nose up and act all high, like mightier than. But geez, yeah, she's really going for it.
Sometimes you just have to send it. Ryan?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't listened to much of the album, but still kind of working through What We Do in the Shadows. So enjoying that as my just kind of recently watched show.
Nice. I've on one of my favorite shirts of all time right now. Just fun fact. It is the Black Excellence Shines Bright. It was the pregame top that Legion wore against San Antonio, which was gifted to me by Alex Cornale. So shout out Alex, whom his daughter might be one of the cutest babies I've ever seen in my life. So very, very cute. We had our first Friday night game. We had our first high school football game. And I understand that I grew up in the deep South. I do completely understand this fact. I do forget how much these rednecks are really entertained by anything. Absolutely anything. I mean, we went from a private school playing private school teams to playing the public school teams. And boy, did they sell that place out, because as opposed to playing the rich kids, they're playing the slightly less rich kids. And that was very exciting for these rednecks. And so it was a blast, sell out, white out, always a good time. So shout out to Friday Night Lights, I guess.
Yeah, I think we all come from high school football country to some extent or another. That's the best stuff in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Carolina's pretty big too. So yeah.
Yeah, well,
So-
yeah.
Still-
Speaking as someone who came from Indiana, obviously New York is a little bit of a different ball game.
I will say it was an Ohio high school football game that still remains the best ever football game I've ever seen person, because the game went into triple overtime, and the team that would have been my high school had I stayed in Ohio won off of a 2-point conversion to win it in triple OT.
There we go.
You can still find this on the BBC. But my alma mater, I'm about to dox myself. My alma mater, we had a massive fight that happened at the end of the game where our biggest rivals coach, we already got to fight the year before. So they were not supposed to cross halfway. And our biggest rival had beaten us with like 14 seconds to go on a last second touchdown, and their coach came across halfway when they weren't supposed to, and our coach punched their coach right in the face, and it made the BBC did the whole thing, and it was like, can you believe these rednecks? And the answer was, it's still no, I can't. So if you want to, if you want to go through the BBC old archives, you can find my old high school, our coach punching another coach in the face. So shout out Coach Holiday.
Love it.
All
This
right.
poor guy catching strays.
I mean, he was the one that threw the strays, actually. So it wasn't. All right. Well, that is it for me. Thank you all so much for listening. I really do appreciate you all. Check out addedtime.com and use code USL to get 10% off. And check out our Patreon.com/the USL show. If you are listening this the day after or whenever you listen to the podcast, thank you so much. Check out the live stream. The live streams are always fun. We always have the fun people in chat between like Andrew, Michael, Nicholas Murray, Andy, Ben, just a lot of people who are always
Shout out Trey Higdon tonight, by the way.
Trey Higdon, who showed up, also one of the cutest kids I've ever seen in my life. If you aren't missing just toddler, I guess older than toddler now, picture, just so cute. Edwin, William, I mean, everybody who was in the chat tonight are just the best. So join the chat, have a good time. And for the first and thus final time tonight, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show. The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.